Hello everyone. So I know Sister Lisa says that I don't get nervous, but I always get nervous. But I think my nervousness mostly comes from like I have this, I know what I'm trying to say, and sometimes I always pray that God gives me like the wisdom to explain it in a way that, other people can understand. Just because I think Pastor always says this, like we always speak about stuff that we either just came out of or something that God's ministering to us in that season or in that moment. So yes, so today we're just going to be talking about how it's just a feeling. And we've all heard of different phrases that is very common in movies, music, shows, all of that, where, a lot of the plot is about somebody following their heart. Especially in Disney, they're like, what is your heart telling you? What is your heart feeling? And, your heart is obviously a lot to do with your emotions and how is your heart feeling towards that situation. And the idea of our feelings leading our decisions has determined a lot about who we love and, the things that we love and the things that we, don't love, or the people we don't love. If this person just gives us an icky feeling and we don't know why this person is giving us this feeling, or, we might go to a place or a restaurant, we're like, I don't like this. This doesn't feel right. We often talk about how our emotions or our feelings is attached to a person, a place, and oftentimes our feelings can make decisions on where we work. We start a job and we're really excited, and then all of a sudden the job doesn't work out for us anymore. We don't like how we're feeling when we go to work anymore. And then we leave that job and we're like, I just feel like I need something new. Or I feel like I need a fresh start. I need to move out of my house or move out of this town. Everything is based on how we're feeling, and that will oftentimes lead where we go. And oftentimes even like how we serve God. Sometimes we come to church and we're just not feeling it. We had a really rough Saturday, or we had a rough time going, to church. One of the things that a lot of people say that, you should always make a conscious effort to not argue with anybody on the way to church, because that's the time that the kids want to argue, your husband wants to argue, everybody's like upset Sunday morning getting ready for church, and you have to be intentional to say no arguing, no nothing. We're just going to get to the house of God, and we're going to, we don't want any bad feelings before we get there. And our feelings oftentimes can change that frequently. So I'm going to show a series of photos and how a feeling is oftentimes attached to what those with an image. If I can get it to go, there we go. So obviously you see this picture, and I'm pretty sure everybody's smiling, like the babies are so cute. They have these cute little faces, getting into a little mess. You just have like, that warm, like silly, fun feeling. And then you look at a picture like this and, you're like, man, like that's kind of depressing. That feeling that you just had in the other photo can change that quickly. And you're like, like thinking about a moment that you may have felt that way, or you're looking at their eyes and their face and you're like, wow, like, I don't know, you're just not feeling the same thing. And then you look at another photo and you're like, oh, this looks eerie. It looks scary. I don't know about this. And now the mood is completely changed. And the definition of, I may have went too fast. A definition of a feeling is a cautious and subjective experience or an emotion, a physical sensation or intuitive awareness. It represents how you internally process and perceive your physical and mental state. So it's something that we're experiencing. It's an emotion that becomes overwhelming. You feel it in your soul. You're feeling it everywhere. The environment is just overwhelming to you. It's an experience. I went back. And there's a sermon Pastor preached a little while back, and it really changed a lot of my perspective on this topic, because he talked about a woman who she had like, I can't remember the exact context of how she got here, but she believed this man she met was going to be her husband or was her husband. Like, you couldn't tell her anything. She met this man. She fell in love with this man. She says, this is my man and this is my husband. But this man's like, I don't know you. You're a complete stranger. I don't understand how in the world you came to this conclusion that I'm your husband. And we never went to court. We never did any of this. And one day she breaks into his home, gets up in his bed, and he comes home to a surprise to this woman in his home saying that he's his wife. So he calls the police. They go off to, she goes to jail, and the court hearing, happens, and the judge tells her, all you have to do is just say that this is not your husband, and you'll be free. You'll be good to go. You can go on and live your life. He can go on and live his life. But the lady said, nope, this is my husband right here. And therefore, she went off to prison. Now, whether this is a true story or not, I don't remember if it was. But the whole context of it was that sometimes we can convince ourselves, our mind, our being, so wholeheartedly that this is the reality based on how we felt towards a situation. What we think often leads to how we feel, which often leads to what we do. The lady thought that this man right here is my husband. Therefore, that led to her feeling the emotion that attached herself to this person to be her husband, which led her to an absolutely insane, crazy act of stalking this man and literally allowing it to take her to jail. Have you ever felt a certain way about like a person, that you and this person, you guys are completely at odds, whether it's family, friends, work, coworkers, you and this person just have a really big disagreement, or let's say the person, did something and you just didn't agree with that. And all of a sudden, the person who you genuinely were cool with, that at 9 o'clock that morning, all of a sudden something happened, some feeling came over you because of what they did or what they said, or, whatever the situation may be. And now all of a sudden what you felt positive about this person at 9 o'clock has completely shifted at, 3 o'clock that afternoon. Or let's say you went to a restaurant and you love this place. You and your husband or you and your children would always go to this place. And this was a core memory, whether it's a vacation spot, a restaurant, just something that really brought back great memories, even like a home. And then all of a sudden, something tragic happens, whether a separation, your kids leave, let's say you lost that house, or, something, the house burns down, something negative, happens. And now when you revisit that land that burned down, or that home that you lost, or the restaurant that used to go on dates on, and now you're no longer with that person, all those great emotions that was attached to that person, that situation, that environment has now shifted. And the truth is, the place never changed. The address didn't change. The restaurant didn't change its menu. Nothing changed. The reality of what that is or who that person is hasn't changed. But it's only your feelings that has changed towards it. And the reason why I'm emphasizing so much on, our feelings is because oftentimes if we are depending on our feelings to lead our decisions in our life, it will always end up leading to chaos. How we get to a place where we're not allowing our emotions, because it's such a discipline to be able to discipline your mind to say, what is the reality of my situation, and not being moved by your feelings. And honestly, naturally, I feel like you look at babies and toddlers, like that's their natural state, is to be moved by how they feel. And, I believe that's how we naturally are. And over time, we get understanding and create disciplines to get us to that place to where our feelings aren't making the decisions for our emotions anymore. I may have went. So whenever I think about how am I going to get to the place of not moving from my emotions, but making sound decisions and doing things the right way, and seeing past all the emotional aspects of, my current situation, I think of wisdom. It says, if you do not have wisdom, ask God for it. He is always ready to give it to you, and he will never say you are wrong for asking. You may have faith as you ask him, but you must not doubt. Anyone who doubts is like a wave which is pushed around by the sea. Such a man will get nothing from the Lord, but the man who has two ways of thinking changes everything he does. So in other words, God says, if you want wisdom, just ask for it. It's as simple as that. And a man who doesn't have that wisdom, a man who is just allowing his emotions to waver him and be pushed around like the sea, he's double-minded in everything that he does. It reminds me of some of the hardest friendships that I have, or relationships I have with people, is when one morning they're this way and next minute they're the next way. It's like you don't know what to expect out of them. You're like, okay, are they going to be happy today? Are they going to be miserable? Like, what am I going to get? And it's never a comfortable feeling being on the other end of that, of not knowing what to expect out of a person. And the truth is, I believe when we are that person who we're very wavering in our thoughts and what we're doing and how we feel, it's not comfortable having to let people down or to feel like you don't have control over the situation. And that's where wisdom, comes into place. God has said, if you ask for it, I can give you wisdom in everything that you do. I hope I'm not talking too fast. But wisdom, the definition of wisdom is the ability to make sound, insightful, and well-reasoned judgments by applying accumulated knowledge and experience to life's complex situation. It goes beyond the mere collection of information, acting as a crucial virtue that dictates how to use what you know for the greater good. Wisdom is the principal thing. Wisdom is the principal thing. It's the thing that is going to help you get understanding. Well, it says, therefore, when you get wisdom, you also get understanding. And I believe a lot of the times when we're having a lot of issues with people and we're having a lot of, conflict with others, oftentimes once we have a better understanding of the situation, our entire idea and feelings completely shift from that. Like I mentioned earlier, let's say you have that coworker that you're really struggling with your relationship with. They did something or something happened, and now you had one perspective of them, and now it's completely changed. I believe after you have a conversation with them, you say, hey, I didn't like how you did this. Can you please explain to me what made you, do that, or what made you say that? And then they explain it to you. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I can understand how they came to that conclusion. And once you've gained that understanding, now all of a sudden your whole mood has changed. Those negative feelings or those negative thoughts that you allow to overwhelm you in your perspective towards that person has just completely shifted. And I think that's why, which I don't know the exact scripture where it says, don't let the don't if you have an odds with your brother or your sister, have a conversation with them, let them know how you're feeling. Because I believe that with that understanding, now you can use wisdom and how to, move forward in that relationship. And I believe that God is not a God of confusion. He's not a God who's wavering. He's a God who's consistent. And, when he says something, that's what it is. So when you feel like things are being inconsistent or, aren't direct in your life or in your relationship with that person, I believe when you ask God for that wisdom, he will guide you and he will make things, a lot more clear, and all the emotions and the cloudiness that's around that situation or that person, will then therefore become a little bit more clear. One of the biggest things that I ask myself when I'm in a situation where I'm making decisions is I say, is there any emotion around my decision making, or am I making a decision just based on my reality? The perfect example, which I know the screen's this is a little bit of a blurry picture, but one of my favorite stories is the story of King Solomon. And it's where these two mothers, they both, had a baby at the same time. And one of the mother's babies passed away, and the other mother, still had her baby. And while she was sleeping, the other mother took the baby from the, the mother whose baby was still living. She took the baby from her and claimed it as her own. Well, both mothers come before the king and they tell them the situation, and they're both accusing the other one of lying. So King Solomon uses wisdom and he says, okay, somebody get me a knife. We're going to cut the baby in half, and then you each can have a piece of the baby. Well, the mother, who obviously that wasn't her child, she was like, okay, that's fine. Misery loves company. If I don't have one, she don't have one. I'm fine with that. And then the other woman was like, no, she can have her. That's my baby. There's absolutely no way at this point she can have her. And King Solomon had enough wisdom to see that, okay, the woman who asked for the baby not to be, cut in half, that is her child. And I love that story so much because I feel like King Solomon saw his current situation and was able to think, or saw the current conflict, and he was able to think 2 and 3 steps ahead of what that was going to be. He wasn't just thinking, oh, I'm just going to cut the baby in half and, nobody gets it. He thought about it, and he had enough wisdom to know that what this step is going to lead into this response, which is going to lead me to have better understanding of, who the right parent is. And I believe that is an example of true wisdom. If we're feeling like we're making a decision and the decision is just a right now temporary fix, I feel like we need to really seek God and see if maybe that's truly what he wants, because I believe God's, word is everlasting. And there is situations where you just know, what's right in front of you, and that's all that God reveals. But I do believe that oftentimes when God, he loves to do things well. And I believe that when he's going to restore your mind, restore your decision making, restore your home, your relationships, that he's not just thinking about a temporary fix for right now, but he's thinking about 2, 3, 4 months, not months, years, generations down the line. When he's restoring your marriage, he's not restoring your marriage just so you can make it through, this season, but he's saying, okay, I want them to have enough wisdom and understanding, and I want to take them through some things that's going to break a lot of generational curses, down the line. So I think it's really important to know that God is a type of God who he cares, and his solutions and the wisdom that he gives us is things that last much longer than how we can even imagine. One of the biggest things that I live by is really trying to get to a place where I can put my feelings under subjection. Oftentimes I get in a place where I'm just very overwhelmed, and I'm like the new word, I guess you can say, or maybe it's an old word, I don't know, but everybody always talks about being overstimulated. I'm overstimulated. And there'll be times that I just get extremely overwhelmed in life. Let's say the kids are both just acting up so crazy that day, and I have to tell myself, you know what? Yeah, my kids might be acting up, and it might be a rough day, but I don't have a rough life. I have a blessed life. There'll be times there'll be conflict, at work, or there'll be conflict in family. And I'm like, I don't have a bad job. It's just an unfortunate day. Or I'm grateful for my family. I don't have the perfect family, but I have the perfect family for me. We have to start speaking into we have to start speaking to the spirit that is coming against, our situations, because I believe that being overwhelmed and having anxiety and allowing anxiety to lead into depression and all that stuff, we have to speak to that depression. We have to speak to that anxiety and say, you know what, at the end of the day, yeah, you might be overwhelming me in my emotions, but I'm going to speak to you directly and tell you that I might be anxious right now, but my circumstance is not an anxious circumstance. It's just it's how I'm feeling, and learning how to differentiate the reality of your situation, the reality of the blessings and where God has brought you from, versus a temporary feeling that you may be having because something didn't go your way or somebody said something that may have been a bit offensive. Um, One of the things I really struggled with a lot was understanding, the difference between discerning something versus whenever I felt a certain way towards something. For example, I had times where I would think that how I felt towards a situation was my discernment towards it. And the definition of discernment is the mental ability to see, understand, evaluate matters clearly, particularly when those situations are subtle, complex, or not immediately apparent. And an example of this is there's times that I will, I would have like my husband or, people in my close circle, and I would just all of a sudden like feel something's off. And it could be, we could have been in the same space, just something felt really off to me. And I used to get to a place when I felt like something was off. I used to always like, talk about it and say, hey, I used to talk about it and say, hey, like, is something wrong? Or do you feel some sort of way towards me? Like, is there a situation? Like, what's going on? And they would always just be so offensive and just be like, no, I don't know why you thought that, this, that. And I realized that it was really, God was really trying to have me, was discerning something in my spirit to pray about them towards. And I learned that not everything that you discern and not everything that God sometimes puts on your heart towards a person is something to be spoken out loud. And I believe that God will give you wisdom on how to speak it. But sometimes you discern things that are literally 3 months, 3 weeks, or 3 hours, away from happening. And God will give you that quickening in your spirit to say, hey, I need you to pray for this. I need you. This is what this person might be going through. Or they may tell you something and it might be a little off-putting and you want to say something about it. And if you really ask God for the wisdom, he will tell you like, hey, no, I gave you that revelation for you to take in prayer, not for you to talk to them about it. And it's not saying that you not talking to them about it is you being disobedient, but it's just asking God, how do I handle this overwhelmingness that I'm feeling towards this person, or this overwhelmingness I'm feeling towards their situation that maybe they don't feel for themselves. So it's just really asking God for that wisdom to say, how do I take this overwhelming, feeling that I have towards their situation or need or burden that I have for them? How do I navigate it from here? And oftentimes we'll see that God wants you just to lay it at his feet. He opens our eyes to see people's circumstances from a distance at times so that we can pray. And now we've had a well-rounded view of, what they may be going through or something that they may need in prayer. So in conclusion, I know I originally said that it was just a feeling, but really it's not just a feeling. It's not just a feeling. It's oftentimes like who we are. It's what, and we have to realize, if we are allowing our feelings to overwhelm us, it affects the people around us. It reflects the relationships with us, and how we're able to show up for our community and our home and our circle. If we allow ourselves to be so moved by our emotions, there's times that something traumatic will happen, in my family, or how we were talking about, things that's happening around the world right now. And there'll be times I'll just literally ask God, like, why didn't I know this was happening, beforehand? Why am I now, why couldn't I know like something was wrong before things got like to this point? And God was like, it was because of where you were mentally and how you were feeling. And oftentimes it's because of where we are in our mind and our emotions and how we get so overwhelmed in our current state that we really tend to lose what God is trying to do for us in that season, or how he's wanting us to pray or show up for the people, in that moment. And we have to be intentional about speaking, life over ourselves. When we're feeling overwhelmed, we're feeling down, we're feeling all these things, speak life over ourselves, speak life over the situation. And you'll see how just by you speaking those things starts to change how you think it and change in how you operate and how you move through it. So I really want to just challenge ourselves to really seek God in all things and really have him, govern over our feelings, our emotions, and realizing that it's never just a feeling. But that was everything, Sister Lisa.
That was really, really good, Shavonnah. Gave me a lot to think about. I don't know if you all ever feel this way, but have you ever like dealt with certain personality types in your past, and then you start dealing with people in your present and they start exhibiting some of those same characteristics? And I almost feel like it's all feeling again. I feel like that if something comes up in me that wants to rebel against that, like if there's my mother was a terrible manipulator and controlling person. And so anybody that tries to step in to control me or manipulate me to do something, I back up like 10 feet. And like, it's best for me, like when I feel that because that's an automatic, I think it's time just to like not say anything unless I say something really the wrong way and lose a friendship or relationship. And this has nothing to do with the people in this church. It has to do with friends from the past that are still in my life. But anyway, just to take a step back, like you said, and check with reality. Is this reality or is this like a reaction from the past? Like, because I mean, feelings are, they feel very real, but you have to also wonder, well, which hill do I want to die on? Which battle do I really want to, and sometimes it's like you said, which is very good. Things are, maybe we have some discernment, but it's to pray about and not bring it all out, some very good nuggets tonight. Good nuggets. Anybody else? Does anybody else want to say anything? Did it trigger anything?
I thought it was wonderful. I am a firm believer that feelings are not facts and they make terrible decision assists. We all live in our emotions to a certain extent, but I think it really is the beginning of wisdom when you can start to see, is this just my feelings or is this reality? And I just literally was having a conversation yesterday with my oldest daughter, and we were, she's struggling with some things. And I said, I know it feels so true. What you're saying is true in your feelings. Our feelings do have validity, but how much ownership do we let them have? And so I think Shavonnah, you're dead on it when you think about, when you were talking about, asking God for wisdom. God will give us wisdom. His word says he will. And so I think the beginning of wisdom is just having that pause to say, am I making this decision based just on an emotion, or how does it apply to God's word? Or is it really true, or does it just feel true? And I think when we can start being honest with ourselves, God already knows what's in our hearts, so no sense in trying to hide it from him. But very good. And I think it's an excellent reminder, because you're right. We hear all the things of follow your heart and do this. And, that's why in my mind, the marriage rate or divorce rate is so high, because people say, well, I don't feel like I love you anymore. Well, love is really not a feeling. And so, sound wisdom. And I think that's something we should pursue as Christians, probably more than we even do. And so great reminder. I love the scriptures. And yeah, I just love seeing a godly young woman speak words of wisdom. And thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Yes, that was excellent. Well, I will say I deal with it daily from a perspective of coming from your mind. And if you dwell too much, your body will take on everything that you're feeling.
Yeah.
and whether that feeling is true or not, but your whole body will just take on, like the photos that you showed about the lady that was in a place of depression. So I know about it firsthand personally because I deal with it daily. So I really thank you for, the encouragement and the presentation, because it definitely hits home with me.
I think it was well done tonight. You did a great job. Um, I'm sort of like you, where I'll get those feelings and I have to ask the person, is everything all right? Because, and I've learned this over the years. I do care. Um, even though I've come a long way with people pleasing. I have come a long way. Yet, I do care. I care if I'm hurting somebody. And the Lord, it's just so true. If you go to Him and seek after that wisdom, um, there again, it's helped me so many times that even to the point that person's not thinking about you, because I'm worried I said something wrong, whatever. And He's like, they're not even thinking about you. Move on. And yet I've done what you've done, where I'm like, are you all right? And had people say, what are you talking about? So I had to remind myself, when that feeling comes, is it coming from me? Is it coming from God? Because if it's coming from God, we should go to the person. And then there's the enemy that knows us and knows how to push our buttons and keep our mind in the wrong place. So I think this was you did a beautiful job. Thank you.
Yeah, I found out. I think I have a tendency to be an empath. An empath is just somebody that, senses when other people are not okay. And, and the natural response for an empath is to make things right. If can possibly make things right, let's make things right. And the older I get, the more I realize how much energy I spend trying to make things right, when that's not my job. My husband and I were reading a couples devotional. It was by James Dobson and his wife. I really thought it was going to be great. And one of the questions was, how can I make you happy? I'm like, and Jeff just looked at me and goes, because I was supposed to ask him that, and he was supposed to ask me that. I was like, well, I am happy. So, there is no improvement. But he just looked at me and goes, Lisa, he goes, not one single person can make me happy. And he was so true. I mean, if we're looking for our happiness, a feel-good feeling from somebody else, and it doesn't originate from us, then you know what? It's going to be very fleeting at best, because another person can't make us happy. Our happiness, our joy has to come from our relationship with the Lord. It has to resonate or originate from within. And then what happens is it explodes outward. And it's amazing how people are almost magnetized to those people that are living in that joy, because they don't experience it like that. So, and then some people, I had somebody say to me when I was in the Air Force, is there something wrong with you because you're always smiling? So some people, it just gets really on their nerves, that you got joy, but really there's no one person that can make us happy. And that goes both ways. That means if I'm living with somebody, or I know somebody that's not a very happy person, there's not one thing that I can do to make that better, because that originates with that person. We can certainly, now we wouldn't do things that are annoying to those people. We wouldn't do things just to take them off and see if we can really push them into happiness without our help. But I am saying, we are not responsible for other people's happiness. I mean, That's just the way it is. That's the way of an empath is, well, I can't be okay unless you're okay. Well, yeah, I can be okay even if you're not okay. Because I'm getting older and I'm like, I don't have the energy to do all that anymore. I just don't, you know. But it is all good. This is very good. Shavonnah is wise beyond her years.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for the nice words and everything. I appreciate it. And, you know, glory be to God. I did want to say one last thing really quick, how, because you guys touched on happiness. It's so funny because so Mike and I, for the first time about a few months ago, started like marriage counseling. And I was complaining to the counselor. I was like, yeah, so Mike, like, I'm just in a season and I just need him to do this for me and that for me and this for me, like all these things. And she was like, well, did he used to do those things? And I was like, no, but right now I'm in a season and I just need him to do this and that and that. And she was like, you know, I understand, you know, and I was asking for simple things like just being romantic and being this and that. And she was like, you know, all due respect, I feel like what your problem is not that what you're needing from him to pour into you, but it's because you haven't poured into yourself. And she says, once you pour into yourself, then you'll realize that it's not what you're not focused on what you're not getting from somebody else, but you're so fulfilled, you know? And I just thought about that even on a spiritual level. It's like, oftentimes when we feel like we're wronged by everybody else and we're feeling insecure or feeling like I deal with people pleasing a lot, Sister Carol. So I'm gonna have to sit next to you one Sunday so you can teach me your ways. But like, I realized I was like, once I started just taking moments to pour into myself, like I stopped depending and like getting so bent out of shape about like whether he was pouring into me or not. You know what I mean? Like everything just turned back normal. But I realized it was really that void was me. It wasn't anybody else. You know, and I think people will end marriages because of the fact that they're not happy and thinking that person wasn't making them happy. But the truth is you're just not happy with yourself, you know, and you're not happy with, you know, anyways, there's more probably to, you know, why somebody would, you know, call it. But, you know, that's just like an example.
Yeah, that's very good. Very good. And it didn't take you as long as it took me to get to that point. How long y'all been married?
9 years this year.
Okay, it took me 20. So you're like, I mean, like you're like double warp speed going on over here. Okay. You want to say something, Bridget?
That was beautiful. That was so beautiful. It's so layered. We're speaking about wisdom and, you know, just applying wisdom to things. Lord, sometimes we kind of like, well, for me, wisdom is like, okay, not even in sight. Sometimes when, you know, our expectations and the feelings are not met. And sometimes they're valid, you know, because we don't want to turn off feelings, because feelings are, to me, like that thermometer that you want to, hey, it's setting off, something is happening. And so you don't just go to, you know, because you hear your fire alarm going off, you run for your extinguisher. You're going to, you know, assess actually what is going on. Is there smoke? Is there flame? I hear the alarm, and assess it so you can know how to apply the necessary, you know, intervention. And so I think it's really the wisdom part that needs to apply so we can assess feeling properly, because we cannot get rid of it. It's needed in this in our lives, right? And so for me, it's really applying that wisdom, because in some areas, especially when, you know, whatever you do from your heart, when your heart is really in it, when we get hurt, it hits just the same. It's very painful. For some people, it may be very light, depending on how, you know, what the situation is that may affect our feelings, but it is so necessary. And some is easy to shake, some is not easy to shake. Some we have to really, really seek God for him to give us direction, you know, because there's a voice that's want to tell us, do it this way. Our flesh wants to do it that way. And so, you know, I really appreciate the message tonight. It's just a feeling. So the feeling is not the culprit. Let's examine it. The Bible says, try the spirit, try whatever, see what it is that is triggering that feelings. And, you know, we continue to pray and just apply wisdom to it. Wisdom, you know, it said that wisdom is God personified. So how we, you know, apply the wisdom is, what would God do? What would God say about this matter? So I really appreciate it tonight. It's really enlightening and reminding us to, you know, we don't have to take it too hard, because feeling comes and feeling goes, they say.
Amen. That's true. Thank you so much, Shavonnah.
Thank you.
I hope you all gained something out of tonight's message. It's very good. And I hope you guys have a great 4th of July. Stay safe, stay hydrated. You know, take a little fan to put around your neck or something if you go outside. Anyway, and I hope you enjoy the 250th birthday of our country. That is nothing to
Yeah,
sneeze
that's
at, is it?
amazing.
I know, it is amazing. So proud to be an American.